My children will say, but you know better, Mother. Well, the alcohol and the drugs, the Xanax was devastating, just devastating to me.
I thought I was fooling the world, and the only one I was fooling was myself.
There's some age-based assumptions that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. People think that old people are hard to treat, and so they're unlikely to refer them to treatment, and unfortunately sometimes the treatment agencies are unlikely to want to accept them for that same reason.
Oh, baloney, there's always hope.
I told my wife I ain't gonna give up drinking for you.
Today on The Doctor Is In, we'll look at substance abuse in the elderly.
Hello, I'm Jamie Guth. When an older person has a substance abuse problem, there are many reasons it can go untreated. We may think symptoms like slurred speech, forgetfulness, clumsiness, or depression can be caused by old age. But think again.
The Cocktail Hour. Good conversation with good friends. It's a social ritual that many of today's senior citizens have enjoyed all of their adult lives. To remain social drinkers, they've learned to decrease the quantity of alcohol they drink.
I'm all set. Thank you.
That's because as we grow older, the body's ability to metabolize alcohol decreases. For some, this lesson isn't easily learned.
And so sometimes people get into trouble because what they say to you is they say, well, I'm drinking the same amount I've always drank. And what that means is they actually greatly increase their standing blood alcohol concentration and how much they're running around with. Because the normal answer when you ask older folks, you say, how much do you drink? They say, you know, I just don't drink as much as I used to. You say, why not? They say, just doesn't feel right. No particular reason, just sort of, they automatically adjust to control for that sort of uncomfortable feeling of having too high a blood alcohol concentration.
Yeah, I understand.
Dr. James Campbell is chair of family medicine at MetroHealth Medical Center in Cleveland and a nationally known expert on substance abuse in the elderly. Dr. Campbell says that substance abuse is as common among older adults as it is in younger people.
What you're talking about is probably on the order of 8 to 10% of the population is using substances in a way that's significantly impacting on their life.
One thing that is different among older substance abusers is the drug of choice. Far and away, the most common substance being abused is alcohol. Illegal drug use is relatively uncommon. 2/3 of elderly alcoholics have had problems all their adult lives. This is known as early onset alcoholism. But about 1/3 of elderly alcoholics are categorized as late onset, meaning that alcohol appears to have become a problem only in recent years. But this distinction can be deceiving.
Oftentimes what you find is that people say, boy, they never had a problem until they were old. But when you look back more closely, maybe they did have a problem in their 20s, maybe they had another problem in their 40s, and then they sort of did okay until they were 65 or 70, and then they start to have another problem, whether that alcohol is impacting on a disease they have, or they use alcohol in the concept of they're sort of working around the death of their spouse or something like that, and all of a sudden people notice the problem in a more dramatic way.
Here in a comfortable South Florida gated community, 76-year-old May Light is in her 4th year of sobriety. Though her only roommate these days is of the 4-legged variety, for 37 years, May and her first husband enjoyed a happy and fulfilling life in suburban New York. They married during World War II when he was a handsome officer. Together they made a dashing couple.
Every woman should have a husband like this. They didn't make him any better.
But 20 years ago, when May was 56, her husband passed away.
When my husband died, I was devastated. He was the love of my life.
Rather than taking the time to deal with her grief, May was remarried within a year. The second marriage was unhappy from the start and only lasted 4 years. But that was long enough for May to change from a social drinker into an alcoholic.
I wasn't smart enough to realize that you can't bypass any emotion. We're going in. But basically, that's what my drinking was based on. I thought I could bypass mourning.
Like many late-onset alcoholics, May Light's special relationship with alcohol had begun many years earlier. It just had never become a problem in her life before.
I always drank more than anybody else, but it was never out of control. I liked what alcohol did to me. I became a better dancer. I relaxed more. I could talk more. And the same applied over the years.
By the time May's second marriage ended when she was 62, her drinking was clearly out of control. She was starting to experience blackouts, which scared her enough to ask a psychologist for help.
And the psychologist said he would not take me on as a patient unless I joined AA. And so I joined AA. I got a sponsor. I went through the 12 steps. I even did some speaking.
After 2 years of sobriety, May moved from New York to Florida, and her commitment to AA fell apart.
I was in my mid-60s, and I decided, after all, you're a mature person. You know what to do. You don't have to go to meetings that you don't like. And so I stopped going to meetings. Bad, bad, bad.
May began drinking again. First, it was limited to evenings, but eventually it became a round-the-clock habit. It wasn't long before she hit bottom.
I remember it was a Sunday, and I had gone out, I don't know how, to play golf. I came home, went right to the liquor cabinet and drank. I drank so much that I passed out for 2 days.
When May regained consciousness after 48 hours, she phoned her son in St. Louis, who told her to call 911. After detoxification in a local hospital, May was admitted to a treatment center. Today, she continues to work on her sobriety, one day at a time.
Baby, behave yourself.
Her regular schedule includes AA meetings and other therapy. It's a lot of work, but to May Light, it's worth it.
I have today more confidence in myself than I ever had it in my entire life. There's lots of things going on in this world. They may not all be good, but why not be aware of them? To enjoy the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren. When you're drunk, you can't enjoy anything.
If it's a Wednesday morning at the Kit Clark Senior Center in Dorchester, Massachusetts, you can bet that John Romanowski will be walking in the door. The center offers a wide range of recreational and other services for seniors in this working-class community. But it's not the nutritious meals or the opportunity to chat with friends in the first-floor lounge that brings John to the center each week. For him, the most important service Kit Clark offers is the group therapy session for elderly substance abusers.
Today I am 6 years sober and proud of it. Really proud of it. For me to go 6 years is a miracle like Lourdes, believe me. That's what it is to me.
When you consider the fact that John Romanowski was a drinking alcoholic from the age of 16 until he was 66, you may be inclined to agree with him that his sobriety is a miracle. But older alcoholics who seek help have the highest success rate of any age group. John's life was a series of alcohol-related troubles. Petty crimes while in the military, a broken marriage, arrests for driving under the influence, and countless evictions. The disease of alcoholism shaped most of his life.
You can't scare an alcoholic. You couldn't scare me, I don't care. Couldn't scare me. Booze come before everything. Come before my wife, come before everything. The bills, I used to make paper airplanes out of them and sail them into the basket, file it. That was my filing cabinet.
Through his middle-age years, John worked as a machinist. He was told that if he wasn't sober during the week, he'd be out of a job. So he became a weekend drunk, still a long way from confronting his alcoholism.
I was playing a game, and I was hurting myself because I wasn't letting myself get as drunk as I wanted to get drunk. I was holding it, hey? I was going against myself.
Once he retired, John stopped trying to control his urge to drink all day, every day. Unable to keep his own apartment, he eventually moved to a shelter for veterans. A counselor there found him more permanent housing in a group living section of this building. Very much an independent type, John did not like giving up his privacy.
Share the kitchen, share the bath, share. I was sick of shelters, sharing this, sharing that. Oh, not another bill.
John was told he would qualify for a private apartment in the building, but only if he sought treatment for his alcoholism and became sober. That was the motivation he needed. John began a substance abuse therapy group at Kit Clark. He resisted what he was hearing at first, but started to listen after a fellow member of the group warned him of dying drunk and miserable if he didn't stop.
He told it straight. I love that. Love what he said. I shook his hand. I said, thanks, Joe. You helped me, I said, it's time to put away my toys. I'm getting older. My legs are going. I can't breathe right. I don't want to get that emphysema or whatever. So call it from fright or whatever. But I think it's more or less the grace of God, my higher power, that I finally believed. And here I am today. I'm so and proud of it.
What do you like about sobriety?
Love it. Everything.
Georgia Neal leads substance abuse therapy sessions at Kit Clark. She says that many people still believe older substance abusers can't stop, even though studies show this group has the highest success rate in treatment.
What we see in our program day in and day out is older people coming in who do change, and when they stop drinking, their lives, the quality of their lives really improves. And they can improve in many ways. Their physical health sometimes improves. Even if it doesn't dramatically improve, at least they're preventing some other problems from getting worse. Their cognitive abilities often improve because alcohol can damage brains, and sometimes that damage is permanent, but often it's reversible. So that if they stay sober for a while, they start clearing up and can think more clearly, can remember better. Relationships improve when they stop drinking, because how many of us like to be around drunk people? It's not real appealing. And also their self-esteem improves dramatically. They feel much better about themselves.
I can hear the birds sing. I can see the sun shine. I can take a walk and feel proud of myself without looking over my shoulder, see if anybody's following me. It's just a glorious feeling for me. It really is. I really believe Kit Clark has saved my life. I love it. I wouldn't trade it. It's my home. I can finally say I'm home.
Home for Nancy and Alan Roberts is a one-story house in South Florida designed for them by their son. The living, as they say, is easy, but that hasn't always been the case. Nancy has fought several times with alcoholism, but it seemed to be under control after she retired.
And the first couple of years were wonderful. Did all the crafts and flower arrangement, all the running around. And then my husband needed my car. He had lost the company car, so I sat home for 2 years, didn't pick up the telephone, didn't go to meetings, I just sat home. As a result, I started having panic attacks.
I didn't know what a panic attack was. We were out driving one day and she says, I'm having a panic attack, I gotta go to the hospital. I said, there's nothing wrong with you, you don't have to go to the hospital, there's nothing physically wrong with you.
As difficult as it was for her husband to understand, Nancy's increasing panic attacks were quite real. To treat the condition, Nancy was given a prescription for an anti-anxiety medication called Xanax. It's one of the drugs known as the benzodiazepines, which to people with a history of alcoholism can be highly addictive.
It's to the brain, it's like taking a straight drink of alcohol, like taking a shot. The brain doesn't know whether it's alcohol or whether it's a tranquilizer or whatever.
I took the prescription home from the hospital, had it filled, and I was off and running. Overdosing, getting out of bed to go to the bathroom, falling on the floor. And this went on for a week, 10 days, until I begged to go back to the hospital.
So here I am, first of all, not knowing what panic attacks are. Then she's going in the same mental hospital 4 times within about a 4-month period. And I'm getting a little upset, I'm getting a little angry, and I'm wondering, well, you know, what are we going to put her in a mental hospital for the rest of her life or whatever?
Fortunately, help was close at hand. In West Palm Beach, the Hanley-Hazelden Center has a special program dedicated to the treatment of older people with substance abuse problems. Carol Colleran Egan is the program's director. Though most of the substance abuse problems she sees are alcohol-related, addiction to other drugs is also a major problem.
The majority of older adults that are being identified and are coming into treatment are not using street drugs, if you will. The majority are using prescription medication. And we have a lot of focus in our country on younger people and illegal drugs. And here we have a whole generation of people that are getting zonked on perfectly legal drugs. The most commonly abused prescription medication for older adults is in the benzodiazepine family of drugs, which is Valium and Xanax and Librium. These are tranquilizers. We are getting older adults in treatment that have been on prescription for Valium for 15, 20, and 25 years. And I don't know if you're aware, but Valium was initially designed to be a 14-day trauma drug.
Carol Colleran Egan was an advisor for a major study on older women and substance abuse conducted by Columbia University. Their findings showed that physicians are 37% more likely to prescribe a tranquilizer for an older woman than for an older man. Prescription drug addiction in the elderly isn't so much a matter of overprescribing, but rather inappropriately prescribing, and sometimes even underprescribing.
In somebody who has genuine pain, you know, whether it's arthritis or whatever it is, they virtually never become genuinely addicted. You really can go ahead and liberalize even the use of, you know, fairly strong pain medicines for chronic pain is fully acceptable and unfortunately doesn't get used enough.
When elderly people don't receive the prescription pain medications they really need for ailments like arthritis, they sometimes try alcohol as a painkiller.
Alcohol actually is a very ineffective painkiller and really should never be used as a painkiller. And it also, unfortunately, interacts with many of the painkillers that are out there, both over-the-counter and prescription painkillers.
Another common but ineffective use of alcohol is drinking a nightcap in the evening to sleep better. Alcohol can help someone go to sleep faster, but it decreases the quality of sleep throughout the night.
Sleep is not a sort of on-off phenomenon. When you go into sleep, you go deeper into sleep and then lighter and cycle up and down. What happens, unfortunately, with older folks is that about every 2 hours, that cycle brings them very close to being awake again. And if they're not careful, they actually will then wake up. Alcohol does that exact same thing and causes an exacerbation of that and makes it more of a problem. And so they never feel rested, they never feel like they got an adequate sleep.
Dr. Campbell says that elderly patients as a whole are not being diagnosed and treated for depression. Doctors eventually realized that Nancy Roberts was suffering from depression, and she's responding well to antidepressant medication. but medical treatment was a small part of her daily care at Hanley-Hazelden.
You can be a success by doing 3 simple things.
They kept us busy from 7 in the morning till 4:30. I was exhausted.
Working your program.
10 women and 6 men. And we said to each other, we're alcoholics. They didn't have to say anything else, because I know what an alcohol person feels like inside.
Roll our shoulders around and roll back down.
The program at Hanley-Hazelden is comprehensive. Exercise classes teach the patients to become more aware of and more caring of their physical health. And a lot of attention is paid to helping them prepare for new lives after treatment. Knowing how to use email, for example, is a good way to break the pattern of social isolation that many elderly substance abusers fall into. Because everyone in the program is an older adult, the atmosphere is less threatening and more conducive to a successful recovery.
They know what I'm talking about. When I complain about the pains in my knees, they know immediately that I have arthritis. When I'm feeling a little tired and depressed, that's part of our age. The hormones have stopped popping and we're slowing down. And we don't have to explain or apologize for this. These are the facts of life. Our bodies have slowed down, and I think that's why the alcohol hits us so darn hard.
Alan Roberts attended programs for family members at Hanley-Hazelden. As he's learned more about substance abuse and recovery, his anger toward Nancy's disease has gone away.
Like any situation, I think you got to get it out in the open. If you keep it bottled up, it's going to be a problem. And I see now the way Nancy's progressing and so forth, things are getting better, our life is getting a lot better, and I think the worst is over.
That was a good one. That was a good one.
As a group, older people respond very well to treatment for substance abuse. The problem is that too few actually enter treatment. They're often ashamed to admit they have a problem.
Shame is the #1 issue for our older adults coming into treatment. Now, they grew up in a time when alcoholism, the disease, was connected with that man under the bridge, if you will. So it was a shameful thing. If Aunt Tilly drank too much and caused problems, that was put in the back room, and we really didn't discuss those things.
The other difficulty in getting older adults into treatment is that often people around them don't recognize there is a problem. Sometimes that's because we underestimate the capabilities of older people.
Take, for example, a 75-year-old man is driving down the road and he's sort of doing a little wavering over the center line. When he gets out of the car, the officer is going to start to make age-based assumptions and say, well, I know that old people don't know how to drive well, I know that this guy maybe has whatever and whatever, and he may not even think about whether the person has alcohol on board. The same car with a 30-year-old man, they're going to pretty quickly decide they want to decide whether there's alcohol on board.
Got you weaving around back there.
And so they're very resistant to being identified as having an alcohol problem. In addition, their families are also less likely to see them, and their physicians are less likely to see them. If you have an older person who's got trouble with their memory, who has trouble with falls, any of those type of issues, you should look. Is there a possibility there's an underlying substance problem? This may not be just a result of old age, and the problem is there's just not enough people looking underneath and finding the treatable problem.
The more all of us know about the problem of substance abuse, the better. A Meals on Wheels volunteer or a postal carrier can help identify problems. Often these are the only people an older person actually speaks with on a regular basis. But if we do recognize a problem, how should we speak to older people about it?
The most important thing is to make sure that you have a couple of tenets in your friendship. One is to say, I'm telling you this because I care about you.
Something I've wanted to talk to you about for a long time. You've been drinking an awful lot, and I think you might have a drinking problem.
I don't have a problem.
And sometimes you eventually have to sort of agree to disagree. You don't say, well, if you don't agree with me, I'm never going to be your friend again necessarily. But you don't have to buy into saying, well, okay, I'll say you don't have a problem so we can continue to be married or we can continue to be whatever. But you have to be very concrete.
I mean, we missed you at the wedding. I wanted to see you there, and you were home drinking.
Be very, very concrete and be non-judgmental. You know, it's not about the older person or any other substance abuser being a quote-unquote bad person. Somebody who has pneumonia, we don't say it's your fault you have pneumonia. It's not their fault they have a substance abuse problem, but it is treatable if they can get through that.
As today's baby boomer generation becomes tomorrow's elderly generation, the treatment community is expecting that illegal drug abuse will be a much larger problem in the elderly.
It will be interesting to watch, but there's a lot of activity around marijuana in its inhaled form and what that impact that will be on aging lungs and respiratory physiology and the development of emphysema. In the same way that you're taking an aging heart, if you're exposing that aging heart to an exciting agent such as cocaine, which is going to cause arrhythmias and other problems, even in very young, healthy hearts, you're going to see a lot more problems develop.
Whatever the form substance abuse in the elderly takes, one thing is certain. Treating an elderly person's substance abuse problem is a lot cheaper than ignoring it.
Did he mention anything about your liver tests?
That they're normal.
Okay. Would it be okay with you if I contacted him?
What's the result of that person's continued drinking? They're likely to get hospitalized with gastritis, bleeding ulcers, broken hip, broken ankle, falls, bleeding into their head. They're likely to have medication side effects from either non-compliance from being drunk or super compliance at other times. And all of those things actually have reliably shown that anybody who's got an active substance abuse problem spends a huge amount of money in healthcare resource dollars. And far and away the cheapest thing you can do is to treat the underlying substance abuse, and many of those other dollars will never have to be spent.
Of course, the best reasons to treat substance abuse problems have nothing to do with dollars and cents. How can you count the value of an older person's renewed sense of dignity and happiness?
When I see someone who's been drinking, whether it's been heavily a few years or most of their lives, change that, stop drinking, and the changes that come about from that can be really remarkable. I've seen people really turn their lives around, and it's inspiring.
If you're in doubt about whether or not you have a substance abuse problem, ask yourself these questions. Do you think you have a problem? Does anyone else think you have a problem with substance abuse? Does anyone give you a hard time about substance abuse? If the answer is yes to any of these questions, see your doctor or call Alcoholics Anonymous. There's always help available. And it really is never too late to change.